everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. This time we're going to be exploring Islamic monotheism, also known as Tawhid.
Right.
And guiding us on this journey is going to be a book called Treatise on Islamic Monotheism, written by Imam Muhammad bin Abd al-Wahhab. And we're going to try to unpack, what are the core principles of Tawhid? Why is it such an important concept within Islam? And, is it relevant for believers today? I think it'll be really interesting to kind of see how this ancient text can shed some light on our modern lives.
It's fascinating, how relevant this book still is. It was written in the 18th century, but Imam Muhammad bin Abd al-Wahhab was a reformer.
Yeah.
And he really wanted to bring Islamic beliefs and practices back to, their purest form. And so this treatise had a huge impact on Islamic thought. Yeah. And it's still studied and debated today.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about Tawhid. I feel like I hear that term a lot,
Sure.
but I'm not sure I fully grasped it.
So at its very core, Tawhid is the belief in the oneness of God, Allah. And this is like the bedrock of Islam.
Right.
It's the idea that there is only one God and that he is the only one worthy of worship.
Okay, so that makes sense. But how does that translate into daily life? Is it just about believing in one God, or is there more to it?
Well, it's much more than just an abstract belief.
Okay.
The book emphasizes that Tawhid should really permeate every aspect of a believer's life.
Yeah.
It impacts how we view the world, how we make decisions, how we interact with others.
So it's like a guiding principle. It's a framework for living.
Exactly. And the book really hammers home this point that associating partners with Allah, what's known as shirk, is the biggest sin you can commit.
Wow, that's pretty serious. But I have to admit, sometimes, I find myself relying on things other than Allah when I'm stressed. I'll check my horoscope or obsess over things I can't control. Is that a form of shirk?
No. Well, it's interesting you bring that up because the book actually addresses these more subtle forms of shirk that can kind of creep into our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Things like putting too much faith in luck or technology or wealth or even our own intellect. These can all be deviations from true Tawhid.
That's a really eye-opening perspective. I never thought of it that way. So Tawhid is about recognizing Allah's power and authority in every situation.
Precisely. And one of the most powerful examples of this is actually the Prophet Muhammad's life. The book talks about how, when he began preaching Islam, he was offered all kinds of wealth and power, but he rejected those offers because it went against this principle of worshiping Allah alone. Imagine being offered everything you desire, but refusing it because it would compromise your faith.
Wow, that's incredible. It shows the depth of his commitment to this idea of Tawhid. But what about asking other people for help? Is that allowed in Islam?
Yeah, that's a common misconception. The book clarifies that, seeking help from other people is permitted. I mean, we rely on each other all the time, right?
Right.
But the key is where your ultimate reliance lies. And it always has to be on Allah.
So, I can ask my doctor for medical advice, but ultimately, it's Allah who grants healing.
Exactly. The book even shares this story about a man who went to this really righteous person for help with a problem. And the righteous person just told him, ask Allah, for he alone can grant your wish.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. It's about understanding the hierarchy of power. Allah is the ultimate source of everything.
Exactly. And that leads us to another important aspect of Tawhid.
Okay.
Which is that it's not just about believing in Allah, it's also about acting in accordance with that belief.
So it's about putting your faith into action.
Precisely. The book emphasizes aligning your actions with the Quran and the teachings of Prophet Muhammad. Faith without deeds is incomplete.
So what are some of the actions that the book highlights?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me was the warning against taqlid, which means blindly following traditions or religious leaders without understanding the reasoning behind them. So the book encourages Muslims to seek knowledge, to understand their faith deeply, and not to just accept things at face value.
I love that. It reminds me of that saying, don't just take someone's word for it, verify it yourself. It's about having an active and engaged approach to your faith.
Absolutely. And this active engagement is further broken down into 3 categories of Tawhid, which help us understand its different dimensions.
Okay, I'm curious to hear about those. Let's unpack them.
Okay, so the first is Tawhid ar-Rububiyyah, which means oneness of lordship. And it's the belief that Allah is the sole creator, sustainer, and provider of everything in the universe.
So it's like acknowledging that Allah is the ultimate author, the one who sets everything in motion.
Yes. And this can be really comforting, especially when we feel like we're not in control. It encourages us to trust in Allah's plan. The second category is Tawhid al-Uluhiyyah, which means oneness of worship. And this emphasizes that all acts of worship, whether it's prayer or supplication or rituals, should be directed solely to Allah.
So no sharing the spotlight. It's about focusing your devotion exclusively on Allah.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that only He is worthy of our ultimate love, devotion, and submission. And finally, we have Tawhid al-Azma wa Sifat.
Okay, that's a mouthful. What does that mean?
So this one focuses on believing in and understanding the beautiful names and attributes of Allah, as they are described in the Quran and the Sunnah. It's about appreciating His divine perfection without trying to fit Him into our limited human conceptions.
So recognizing the vastness and incomprehensibility of Allah's attributes while still trying to understand them.
Yes, it's about approaching this understanding with humility and awe.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground already. And I can already start to see, like, how relevant these concepts are to our lives today.
It's amazing, isn't it? How this ancient text can still speak to our modern challenges.
I'm really intrigued by, like, how this concept of shirk plays out in our modern lives. Like, it seems like there's so many subtle forms of it that we might not even recognize. So I'm eager to kind of explore that a little bit further. It's funny, you know, before we even started this deep dive, I kind of thought Tawhid was like this abstract theological concept. But the more we talk about it, the more I'm realizing like how deeply practical it is. It's like this lens you can use to view like every aspect of your life.
I agree with that. And it's interesting how the book addresses like very specific situations where we might unknowingly stray from this principle of Tawhid.
Oh, like what? Give me an example.
We'll take the idea of seeking intercession. The book clarifies that while it's permissible to ask Allah to fulfill our needs, through the intercession of prophets or righteous people, it's a form of shirk to believe that these individuals have like independent power to grant our requests.
Right. So it's okay to ask for their prayers. But ultimately, we have to understand that only Allah has the power to answer them.
Exactly. It's about maintaining that clear understanding of where the true power lies. And this is where the book's emphasis on seeking knowledge becomes so important.
I can see that, because if you don't have that foundational knowledge, it's easy to fall into those traps of associating partners with Allah.
Right. And the book also talks about other subtle forms of shirk, like that we might not even be aware of, like relying on horoscopes or lucky charms to predict the future or influence events.
Oh, yeah. I'm so guilty of that. Sometimes, like, if I'm feeling anxious, I'll just, like, mindlessly scroll through those horoscope apps. It seems harmless, but now that you mention it, it does contradict the idea that only Allah knows the unseen.
It's those seemingly small things, that can slowly chip away at the foundation of Tawhid in our lives. And the book really stresses that true reliance should only be on Allah.
It's like a constant reminder to check yourself to make sure that your actions are aligning with your beliefs.
Absolutely. And this also extends to the realm of religious practices. The book cautions against innovations in religion, adding things that have no basis in the Quran or the Sunnah.
So it's about sticking to the original teachings of Islam.
Yes. And again, this ties back to the idea of taqlid, blindly following traditions without understanding their origins or their purpose. The book encourages us to be critical thinkers, to question, to seek knowledge, to make sure that our practices are aligned with the true spirit of Islam.
It's about having an informed faith, not just a blind faith. And I feel like that makes so much sense in today's world, where we're constantly being bombarded with information and different interpretations.
Right.
We have to be able to discern, like, what's authentic.
Exactly. The book emphasizes that true worship should be based on following the Prophet Muhammad's example and adhering to the teachings of Islam as they were originally revealed.
It's interesting to think about how Tawhid can actually be a very empowering concept. It's not just about restrictions and prohibitions. It's about, like, having this clear understanding of who Allah is and aligning your life with His will.
You've hit the nail on the head. The book really challenges us to examine our intentions, to purify our hearts, and to constantly strive to live in accordance with Allah's will. It's about aligning our inner and outer worlds.
And it's a continuous process, right? It's not like you achieve perfect Tawhid, then you're done.
Absolutely. Tawhid is a lifelong journey of growth, self-reflection, and purification. It's about constantly striving to improve our relationship with Allah.
So how does this understanding of Tawhid impact how we interact with others and with the world around us?
That's a great question. The book emphasizes the importance of treating others with justice and compassion, regardless of their beliefs or their background.
So it's not just about personal piety. It has social implications as well.
Precisely, true piety is reflected not only in our rituals and our personal acts of worship, but also in our character, our dealings with others. and our commitment to upholding righteousness in all aspects of our lives.
I love that it connects the personal and the social. It's not just about your own individual relationship with Allah, but it's about how that relationship spills over into your interactions with the world.
Yes, the book reminds us that true believers are those who not only profess faith in Allah, but also work to establish justice, to promote good, and to speak out against what is wrong.
It's about taking action. It's about making a difference in the world. It's about living your faith in a way that benefits not just yourself, but also those around you.
Exactly. The book inspires us to see Tawhid, not as this set of restrictive rules, but as this liberating and empowering force that can guide us toward a life of meaning, purpose, and fulfillment.
It's a framework for living a truly meaningful and impactful life. And this idea of constantly striving to be better, to be more aligned with Allah's will, that really resonates with me. It gives you a sense of direction and purpose.
I agree. And it reminds us that this journey of faith is never ending. There's always room for growth, for learning, and for deepening our understanding.
So where do we go from here? How do we take all of this and apply it to our own lives?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's something that each individual has to grapple with. The book provides us with a map, but we have to navigate the terrain ourselves.
As we kind of keep going with this idea of Tawhid, I'm realizing it's not just about understanding the theological principles. It's really about cultivating a certain mindset, a way of being in the world that's constantly aligned with Allah's will.
I think that's a great way to put it. And the book really emphasizes, that this alignment requires continuous effort and self-reflection.
One of the things that really stood out to me was the book's discussion on hypocrisy. It feels especially relevant today. You know, when it's so easy to get caught up in appearances, social media posturing, all that stuff.
Right, it's a timeless message, but perhaps even more relevant in our current age of curated online personas. The book warns against, outward displays of piety that aren't accompanied by genuine sincerity and inward purity.
Right. It's a reminder that our focus should be on cultivating a genuine connection with Allah and not on seeking the approval or the admiration of others.
Exactly. It's about purifying our intentions and ensuring that our actions are motivated by a sincere desire to please Allah, not to impress other people.
The book also talks about the importance of constantly seeking knowledge and striving to deepen our understanding of Islam, and it seems to caution against complacency and encourages Muslims to really actively engage with the Quran and the Sunnah.
It reminds me of that saying, the ink of a scholar is more sacred than the blood of a martyr. The pursuit of knowledge is like a central pillar of Islam. And this book really emphasizes, that we should never stop learning, questioning, seeking a deeper understanding of our faith.
Yeah, it's that constant reminder to stay curious, to not just accept things blindly, but to really engage with the teachings, seek guidance from authentic sources.
Precisely, and this ties back to the concept of Tawhid. The more we understand Allah, His attributes and His will, the better equipped we are to align our lives with His guidance.
I think this whole deep dive has really emphasized this idea of not just having faith, but having an informed faith. It's not about blind acceptance. It's about critical thinking, reflection, and actively seeking knowledge.
I completely agree. The book encourages us to be active participants in our faith journey, not passive bystanders. It's about constantly striving to grow, to learn, to refine our understanding.
So as we wrap up our exploration of Treatise on Islamic Monotheism, what are some key takeaways that our listeners can walk away with?
I think first and foremost, the book highlights the centrality of Tawhid, this belief in the oneness of God as the bedrock of Islamic belief. It's not just a theoretical concept. It's a principle that should permeate every aspect of our lives, from our inward beliefs to our outward actions.
Yeah, it's about living and breathing that belief.
Yeah.
In everything you do, not just paying lip service to it.
Exactly. Secondly, I think the book emphasizes the importance of sincerity and purity of intention in all of our acts of worship. It's a reminder that our focus should be on pleasing Allah, not on seeking recognition or praise from others.
Yeah, that's crucial, especially in today's world, where it's so easy to get caught up in external validation and social media posturing.
Absolutely. And finally, I think the book emphasizes the ongoing nature of our journey of faith. It encourages us to constantly seek knowledge, to reflect on our beliefs and our practices, and to strive for continuous growth and improvement in our relationship with Allah.
It's just this beautiful reminder that our faith journey is a lifelong process of learning, growing
Yeah.
and drawing closer to Allah.
It really is. I think this deep dive has been such a wonderful exploration of these ideas, and I hope it encourages our listeners to delve deeper into the treatise on Islamic monotheism themselves.
Yeah, for sure. Me too. It's been a really good source of inspiration and insight for me. And it's amazing, how a text written centuries ago can still speak to us so powerfully today.
I think the timeless wisdom, of Imam Muhammad bin Abd al-Wahhab's words continues to resonate with Muslims across generations. And his emphasis on Tawhid really provides us with this solid foundation for navigating the complexities of life in any era.
Well, on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. We hope you enjoyed this exploration of Islamic monotheism. And remember, the pursuit of knowledge is a lifelong endeavor, so keep those minds curious.